Hey guys, and welcome back to Monka, where I occasionally tried to structure some of this content, but I occasionally don't. And today we're doing the occasionally don't because goddamn, it's just not gonna happen. I'm gonna be talking about a game, but if you expect any serious review and breakdown of it, that's not gonna happen because all I'm gonna do is fucking gush. Because I was listening to the soundtrack, I was like, goddamn, it was so underrated. Goddamn, what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about Blue Reflection Second Light, which was released back in, I want to say November, I believe. November sounds about right to me. I think it was released in November, and I started playing this game in November as well. That's around when I got it. I pretty much got it when it came out. Went into it with absolutely no expectations and got blown the fuck away. Let me tell you, this game is going to go down as one of the most underrated JRPGs I've ever played in my entire life. And I'm not even joking about that because this is criminally underrated. Like, I see nobody talking about this game anywhere. Like, forums, Discords, fucking the JRPG subreddit, nowhere. But I see people talking about this game and it's amazing, dude. Level out a little bit. I knew I was going to go off the handle. So, game's published by Koei Tecmo, developed by Gust, which this was my first ever time experience a Gust game. And honestly, if they make every game like this, they make fucking bangers, which they don't, unfortunately. I tried a Telluriza shortly after playing this game, and honestly, I didn't like that game. That's a preference thing, though. I know some people who love that game. I just didn't. I just didn't like the alchemy aspect of it, to be honest. But honestly, Blue Reflection Second Light is just something else, and it's like, I can't believe how nobody talks about this game. It's a lower key release, but god damn, is it good. And I believe I beat it in January. Yeah, I beat it in early January, picking up in November. It took a couple months for me to beat it. It's a fairly long game. It took me about 60 hours, pretty much doing everything front to back and doing all the side quests and everything. Took about 60 hours. Won't complain because that was probably some of the most funnest 60 hours I've had since I played. Honestly, this is my favorite JRPG that I've played probably since Persona 4, like 5 years ago. 4 years. It's been 4 years since I played Persona 4, but this is probably my favorite JRPG since then. Structuring it, breaking it down, goddamn. I'll get the shit that I really don't care about out of the way first, which is the graphics. It's not the most beautiful looking game, but it is pretty good looking for all things considered on the Switch. It's got the anime aesthetic because that's what it is. It's an anime stylized game. So that's pretty much what you're gonna get with this, is an anime stylized game with graphics. It's a good looking game. On Switch, you know, it looks fine, but I really don't give a shit about graphics, so I don't care about the graphics. I don't look into that. Mainly what carries this game is everything else but the graphics. So moving on to what I believe to be the, not really the selling point of the game, but still pretty fucking good, is the gameplay. And I know that sounds kind of bad, but this game is really the sum of its parts. Everything coming together is what makes it great. And you know what? The gameplay is pretty fucking fun. The game alternates between two different styles of play, really, which is your dungeon crawling, dungeon exploring, battling part, and then the kind of life sim shit that they throw in there. So pretty much you alternate between crawling through dungeons and then doing life sim stuff. The life sim stuff can be, well, some people will probably comment that the life sim stuff is kind of boring because pretty much what you're doing is interacting with the other characters, doing dates and whatever. Dates are pretty much this game's way of advancing your relationships with other characters. You're doing side quests, which can sometimes be, you know, it's alright. The life sim is really all character building and kind of building up your own little base, which this game is, it is based around like a high school stylized setting, but it really isn't. And I'll get more into that when I talk about the story aspects of this game. But the game is based around kind of like your hub is a high school type of school kind of setting, and then you'll spend your dungeon crawling pretty much in these other worlds besides the school. Like I said, don't let the fact that it's based around a high school setting dissuade you, because it's really not all that like every other typical JRPG based in a high school. But I can say at some points that the life sim part can be kind of boring because it's just kind of, you know, you're building relationships with characters or whatever, but it really helps to build the game when you're going through the story of it, when you have all these relationships and learning about these characters. And all the characters are very interesting, so it is worth doing. Though I will say near the end of the game, the life sim shit started to drag on a little bit. Like, I'm just keep doing it. It's like, well, it's getting kind of boring. Also in the license style, you're creating these fortifications almost that boost certain stats or whatever. It can also be used in side quests to essentially bolster your relationship with the characters. The light simming stuff is just a fun break from the action. Some people will probably not like it and will just blaze through it and beat the game a lot faster than 60 hours, but I liked it, so I did all of it and I enjoyed it quite thoroughly. Now, the dungeon crawling part is really what I enjoyed more, and I think a lot of people enjoy more because that's mainly where you're going to be battling, and it's not random encounters, thank God. You actually see your enemies on the map and you can sneak around them even. There's this stealth mechanic where you can crouch down, you can actually sneak around enemies, you can actually see their line of vision and do surprise attacks on them. It's a really cool element for attacks and preemptive attacks and all that shit. In the dungeon crawling aspects, you can collect loot and shit like that. You're doing battles and really all that stuff. The battles are quite fun. It's action turn-based, which some people might not like. It's kind of interesting because you almost have like this gear setting where your character can go into multiple gears. I think up to 5 if I recall correctly. And every gear gives you more abilities or enhances your abilities. And at level 3, you pretty much power up your characters. It's really cool because at first every character gets this really cool animation and they do all their shit. And it's cool. During these gears, it feels like there's points essentially. It's a point system. So at 1,000, you can start using your gears, but you got like lower end attacks, but once you get to gear 2 at like 2,000 points, you get stronger attacks. We're also at 2,000, like every time you gear up, you get a stronger attack or more better attack, I guess, best to say. I will say this, if you're going to play this game, your side characters are by default set on auto. I'd recommend turning it off and doing it manually like I did. So I was manually controlling all my characters because that's just a way easier way to battle, and it makes you feel like you're more in control during the battles. And they're fun battles, to be honest, I won't lie, and they're very flashy. The music very much helps, which I'll talk about, but they're very flashy and fun. It's really popcorn to battle. I loved doing all the battles. Like I said, near the end of the game, the level cap is 50 and the gameplay starts to drag a little bit, but like I said, I did everything in the game, so that just might be me. Your mileage may vary, but for me, leveling up to level 50, the game started to drag just a little bit with the battling during the end, but that was fine in my opinion because it was a fantastic game. Only thing I didn't like about dungeon crawling was really in relation to the side quests, and occasionally in the main story I'll have to do stealth missions, and these stealth missions are really unfair and they're just kind of dumb. I didn't really like them at all, but that's the only thing I can really complain in terms of gameplay. In terms of gameplay, A+ solid. It's fun as fuck. Dungeon crawling is fun. Life simming can be boring for some people, mileage may vary, but I liked it personally. Now the story and characters is there's 2 really strong aspects, which is the story and the music. Now the story and the characters, the story is essentially really, I don't want to spoil too much, but it's complex as fuck, but it's essentially the main character, Al, was transported to this almost different world where she doesn't know anybody or anything, but she meets up with 2 other girls, and then they try to figure out where they are exactly, because they're like on an island in the middle of nowhere on a high school, and they pretty much all got amnesia except for Al, who kind of knows her original life before going to the school, but she doesn't know how she got there. And then after a while, the characters start to kind of almost have like these epiphanies. They gain access to these places called heartscapes, which are pretty much the emotions of whoever had the awakening. Essentially, it's kind of like the heartscape is like it's their heart and their memories are in there, and by exploring them they gain their memories back. That's really kind of simplifying the story because they don't want to spoil it too much because it's a really good story, but it's an A+ story. Like all the humorous parts are funny, and then there's a lot of emotional intense parts, and all of it is really just the creme de la creme of a fucking JRPG of all things. Like this is a really good JRPG story. I'm used to fucking shitty JRPG stories where they don't do shit for like the entire story. This game is completely different, and the story is just so fascinating because I'm so used to fantasy JRPG shit that when it comes around to shit like this, having almost like this, it's kind of almost like the sci-fi digital, I don't even know how to explain it, but it is not anything like any other setting or story that I've had in a JRPG. It is phenomenal. It's a really interesting, intriguing story with a lot of twists. I loved all the characters in this game, and this game gives you a lot of characters, but they're all really fascinating and cool, and just have really interesting personalities that just all conglomerate, and when they interact it feels so natural. And really that's one of the aspects, like I said, that really carries this game, is this story. Even when it did start to drag on a little bit. Like I said, I kept going because that story is so good, so well written. The voice actors, even though it's Japanese only, unfortunately, but it don't matter because I don't mind it. It's really well voice acted. You feel the emotions of the characters, and it's just all really good stuff. Like, it's a really good story, and I can't get over it. It's just so good, and the moments that this game has, all the emotional moments and all the highs and lows are just so well struck with the story, and it's just a really well told story. And like I said, this almost digital sci-fi setting really helps because it really divorces it from any other JRPG out there. The characters are unique, all have their personalities that kind of gelled together and help to, like, you have almost like your energetic character and your more regressed characters and your kind of just mellow, mild characters, and they really all just congeal well together and really create just genuine interactions that you actually make you feel like, you know, you're a part of the action and everything, and you just come to really love the characters and just love the world in general. And so when the game actually starts to come to a close, and I don't want to spoil too much, like I said, when it starts to come to a close, you start to feel like, oh man, it's coming to an end, and it just gets kind of sad, but it's just that journey throughout the entire time is just so much fun. So in terms of story and characters, just S tier. It's amazing. I fucking love this game's story. I love the characters. Like I said, probably best story and characters since Persona 4 that I've played, at least for a JRPG. Now, in games in general, it had to compete with Yakuza 0, which I had played only a few years prior. So, but like I said, fantastic story, fantastic characters. Definitely one of the carrying parts of this game. But in terms of the soundtrack, good God. Oh my God, this soundtrack is like, you'll hear it in the background, but this is like the best soundtrack maybe I've ever heard in a game. That might be overhyping it a little bit, but goddamn, is this OST just something else? Like, holy crap, this soundtrack is just amazing. There's a whole lot of songs, and honestly, they're all bangers. Like, I went back, like I said, I was going back to the OST today just to listen over to it, and I was just listening to it, I'm like, god damn, this shit is amazing. I will say this, and this is probably, like I said, overhyping it. I was listening to that, and there were 41 tracks on there. I couldn't find one that I didn't think was amazing, and this soundtrack is just so fucking good. The blend of, like, the synthesized sound with, like, actual instruments and, like, orchestra is crazy. It has, like, this almost synthesized sound, and then the violin swoops in, or the piano swoops in, or the orchestrals swoop in and just carry this goddamn beautiful soundtrack all the way through. Like, it really bolsters every moment in this game. A soundtrack can make or break a game, and this soundtrack really sets everything. Every emotional scene in this game absolutely set by the soundtrack. Every upbeat scene set by the soundtrack. The battles, every tense hype scene set by the soundtrack. This OST can get you pumped. Like, if it should be obvious because I was listening to the soundtrack and I got so amped that I just had to record this and had to make this video because it is just sets the tone so well. And like I said, every doom and gloom scene is set by the soundtrack. You feel the doom, like the creeping sounds. It's just like these creeping, like you feel the dread from the soundtrack. And then every mellow scene set by the soundtrack. It's just, the soundtrack is so incredible and has such a nice mix of like these mellow moments with these hype moments, also a mix of synthesized sounds with real instruments. It's just incredible. It's so well composed that I can, at the very least, if you don't want to play the game, just listen to the soundtrack because it is so incredible compared to like almost every other JRPG I've played in a while. It's such a good soundtrack. I just have to say that the battle soundtrack and every hype scene that needed a hype soundtrack, it just kills it. Absolutely. You get hyped up to the max. Like, the soundtrack will just get you going, and it's incredible. But overall, soundtrack, absolute banger. This is not a forgettable soundtrack, and this is not one to sleep on. It is amazing. But overall, closing opinions and what my thoughts were on Blue Reflection Second Light. It should be pretty clear that I recommend this game to pretty much any JRPG fan 101%. If you didn't hear about it or you thought, maybe not, I don't want to really play it, you need to reconsider because this game is fucking amazing. It's going to go down, like, in my opinion, at least in my book right now, this is the most underrated JRPG I have ever played. I've seen no one talk about it, and it is goddamn fantastic. fantastic. I never played the first one, and for the story, you don't really need to play the first one to understand this, which is nice. There are apparently some story aspects from the first one and the second one. I didn't really notice it, or it didn't really bother me. I was able to jump into this game not knowing the first one at all. Honestly, after playing this, I think I might have to play the first one, because goddamn, that was an amazing game. And really, I hope going forward, I haven't played many Gus games, but I have to. And unfortunately, they make the Atelier games, which I don't really... I played Atelier Liza, like I said, and I didn't really like the alchemy aspect of it, which is what made me drop it. But honestly, I hope going forward, Gus gets out of doing more Atelier games and do some other games, because other IPs would really be crazy to see them make. If they can do other IPs like they did Blue Reflection, goddamn, they will be a killer JRPG developer, like, in the coming years, if they can do that. But in conclusion, Blue Reflection Second Light, if you're a JRPG fan, you gotta play this. I might sound like I'm overhyping it, but you really have to play this. If you're willing to dedicate the 60 hours, or maybe 40 if you don't do all the side shit, it's 100% worth it. It is amazing. And I saw it selling on Amazon for like $40. That's a fucking steal. I paid 60, felt like I robbed the fucking bank with this game. It is amazing. Every JRPG I've played afterwards has kind of been struggling to like match it. Like I played Tokyo Mirage Session right afterwards, which is still a great game. And like I said, I talked about that game a bit earlier on the channel, but it had a lot to match, and it didn't disappoint me, but sure as shit did not match Blue Reflection Second Light. But yeah, in conclusion, 100% recommend this game. If you've seen it and you've been thinking about playing it, you gotta. It's amazing. I love it. It'll be probably one of my favorite games for a long time. It's gonna take a lot to match that fucking game, but thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I'll see you. Stay chill.